Win big with new DRF All Access past performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all three past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code 1FREEPP for a free single card today.
Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, taking a look at race number 11 at Woodbine on Woodbine Mile Saturday. Let's throw up the field for the Vigil. The Grade 3 Vigil. This race is for 3-year-olds and up, going 3/4 of a mile over the Tapeta surface. And you've got arguably the best synthetic sprinter in North America right now, the 7, Patches O'Houlihan. He's just been on a roll. He's won 4 of his last 5 starts and was very game to take the bold venture last time out.
Yeah, he needed to show a little bit more last time out. I mean, obviously he's really handy at 6 and he can win at 6.5, but that extra half of furlong could have maybe gotten to him. But Play Me a Tune a game, second in that race. We'll see that one on the other part of the undercard on Woodbine Mile Day. But I think, Dan, every time we kind of cover a race, it's a sprint race, it involves Patches O'Houlihan, it's really tough to look outside of him.
He won this race last year, nipping Last American Exit, who's back for more. Patches O'Houlihan won that race in pace-pressing fashion, and that's where Timeform US has him on our Timeform US pace projector. Patches O'Houlihan drawing the outside post gives Sophia plenty of options. This horse is going to show speed, and it will be interesting to see if Remuda can go with him early.
And Remuda's a new face. I mean, obviously, has had a start at Woodbine last fall, but going to get on the synthetic for the first time, draws the inside, and we've seen that speed, especially last time out at Colonial. They went very quick on July 27th in that turf sprint, and he was right in the mix, came up a little bit short in the end. So we will see. Kind of you have the speed to the inside and the outside in here. It could really make for an interesting pace scenario.
And if the 1 and the 7 hook up in a protracted pace battle, it could set things up for the number 4 Ironstone. Note the LP flag over the chiclet. That indicates that Ironstone is the fastest Timeform US late pace rating. Let's talk about the new face, Remuda, going out for Owen Hardy, and this is going to be his synthetic debut. What I like about this horse is that it seems like Owen has had a whale of a time getting him into regular racing shape. This will be the first time in his career that he's had 3 consecutive races without a layoff line, and I think that's a good sign.
I think it's a great sign. And I actually really liked his effort last time out. I thought he was really gritty. Colonial, I feel like the last couple of years, Dan, has been a little bit of a stronger circuit with horses coming in from everywhere, the purse money being good, and came up a little bit short, but the fractions were certainly fast early on, 21-4, 44-3 there. I think he's intriguing here. Obviously, he hasn't been able to try the synthetic at this point in his career, but his turf numbers are huge. I think they're very comparable to others in here. And regardless, I mean, he's had a 90 buyer on dirt. He's really been able to use his speed to his advantage on any surface.
Last American Exit was second in this race last year, and he was in very good form in the summer and fall of 2023, also finishing second behind Patches O'Houlihan in the Bold Venture. Is he in the same form now as he was back then? He's been racing in good form, but last year he was at his best.
Yeah, I almost wonder if he just peaked a little bit early this season, because when he came off that layoff, Dan, he was ready to roll, right? His first 2 races back were really strong, and his number was able to improve in that third start off the layoff. And I thought his performance was okay behind Bordertown and Mason's Gamble, but still would have liked to seen a bit more from him last time out, knowing that he's probably going to get that same chasing trip once again. He has to face Patches. He was still well defeated there. And I know Patches was 6 clear of everyone else, but this guy was still 3 1/4, behind the second place finisher in there. So I just wonder if maybe this year has been a little different, where he was able to get rolling early and now has sort of maybe tailed off.
Maybe coming into this race off a little bit of a freshening will help. He skipped the Bold Venture, last seen in the Pink Lloyd, beaten by Patches O'Houlihan. Perhaps that'll help him out. I'm a Gambler ran in the Bold Venture, and he ran very well behind Patches O'Houlihan. Let's watch that effort right now. Patches got to the front in the rail. I'm a Gambler's in behind horses, and he's really going to keep trying and make this very close to the wire. Not only is Patches O'Houlihan going to win this race, but the very promising Play Me a Tune is second, and we'll see him in the main event at Woodbine on Saturday.
This is a really good effort. This is a horse who, obviously, when he was in California with Mark Glatt, he was in some really tough spots. I mean, he had to face De Jour on multiple occasions, even some other names there, Lamas, Air Force Red, Belnikov. He faced them all in California. And then to see him come over, I think he probably needed that race in June. And his numbers since going over to the Tapeta, they've taken a big step upward. He's been in those mid to upper 90s in those last 2. And I think he sort of got his test last time out, and he showed that he was going to keep things somewhat close in the end. He was still going to tried to close into it, and to only be beaten by half a length, I think he has some upside in here. And he's 3-1 on the morning line for a reason. I think when he started to look at the field, he's maybe the horse that's been the closest to Patches O'Houlihan, who's met him in these races, right? And maybe could, get the best of him.
He's really found a home on the synthetic surface, and if he works out the same trip as he did last time, it might work out very well, sitting in behind the 1 and the 7 with a fair chance. Ironstone is the 4, and he's just a really likable horse. He was quality at 2 and 3, and he's still going strong. Maybe he didn't run his best race in the Bold Venture last time out, but you can never count this guy out because he's usually there or thereabouts and might get the right race flow here.
I've always been a big fan of him, and I kind of feel bad this year. He's 0 for 6. He hasn't gotten that win now as a 5-year-old. But as you've talked about, Dan, he always tries. Go down his past performances, and they've put him in tough spots since kind of day one of his career after he broke his maiden. It's been a lot of stakes races since then, and if not, it's been allowance optional claiming events that have been against these sorts of types. And last time out, I know when they kind of looked at that, right, obviously we know what happened on plate day. Races got pushed back. He was actually cross-entered in 2 races on that day, and it was, I think, turf or it was Tapeta, and they chose Tapeta for him. And it wasn't a great performance from him. I do think the Bold Venture ended up being not that strung out of a group, and it was all said and done, and he only misses by less than 4 lengths, but would have liked to seen him close a little bit more. I just think horses like Play Me a Tune, I'm a Gambler, were able to do that, but still a big fan of his. And maybe for him, the key against this group, it sounds crazy, is just a slight cutback to 6 furlongs, I think might help him.
6 furlongs might be the big question for the 5 War Bomber. Patches O'Houlihan's the marquee name in this race, but War Bomber's the most interesting entrant because he's got plenty of class. Let's watch his last start, the Grade 2 King Eddie, and he's facing a very good horse in Philo D'Ariana, who we'll see in the Woodbine Mile as well on Saturday. War Bomber made a prolonged move on the outside. It looked like he has Philo D'Ariana dead to rights, and he just can't forge past. It's interesting that they're running him here, cutting him all the way back to 3/4 on the synth. Is it too sharp for him? Is this his best surface?
Tough. I don't think it's his best surface, and that's my biggest issue with it. I think maybe, depending on the trip that he got, maybe you could say 6 furlongs, he can work out a trip. I just really struggle looking at his synthetic races, especially in the last 12 months. Look at those races. 2 of them have been on the synthetic. They've both been out of the money finishes. He's been well defeated in both of them. And I think, one of them was a sprint race. And I do think he probably needed that race to get back into racing form, Dan. And he's been obviously good since then. That second behind Cruden Bay, we showed that replay behind the classiest horse on paper in that event. But I have reservations about him. And I know we can go back down the page and say, well, he's won at 7 Ace, but 6 furlongs, he's tried it once in his career. It was to kick off his season, and just find it to be a little bit of a peculiar spot for him.
The 6 Rock Crest has a few back races. He placed in the Vigil a couple of years ago, and he did a lot of dirty work in his most recent start, the Vice Regent, going 5/8 of a mile. He was involved in a wicked pace dispute. He wound up with the clear lead, and then he eventually paid for his early efforts. This is another horse that could show speed.
He could. And honestly, when you look at his races, say later in last year, right, even when he was 4th in the Vigil, he only missed by half a length. He was part of that pace. The pace was quick. And I thought his effort after that, the Near Arctic, if you go back to that race in October, it says he was 6th, beaten by half a length because it was a blanket finish. Everyone was there, and he looked like he might sneak away at 104-1. The win really wasn't that far out of his reach. So to me, he's a horse that was a little bit better last year. He obviously has had some time off. We've only seen him twice since May 5th, and maybe he can be part of the pace scenario in here again, but I'm just a little worried about his stamina. His races so far, when we talk about the 2 at Woodbine this season, they've been at shorter distances.
And completing the field is simply the horse to beat. That's Patches O'Houlihan, 9 for 11 lifetime. A huge figure when winning the Pink Lloyd, and a Pink Lloyd-esque performance 2 starts back. And he showed that race and figure was no fluke when he dug down deep to win last time out. The race we showed earlier on in the Bold Venture. He's going to get a good trip. He's going to be right there when they turn for home. And as you mentioned, he's probably better at 6 than 6.5.
Yeah, and I think when we look at the Pink Lloyd, that was the race where maybe you could have some doubts about him. He didn't go off favored in that race by the betting public. He was making his first start since November, where he was defeated in the Kennedy Road, decisively defeated in that race. And so to see him win with 103 Beyer, it was his best to his career. He's really been able to show that he was not just a 3-year-old, right? He was able to kind of take that to his 4-year-old season so far. And I just think the distance is going to set him up beautifully. I think Sofia Vivas rides him very well. And, he's a horse that can be forward, but if he doesn't make the lead, we've seen this just once or twice in his career, he's okay. He can have the pressure and he doesn't seem to crumble by having someone, kind of pressure him, around the track.
He was always good throughout his career, but it just seems like he's reaching peak maturity now as a 4-year-old. Let's take a look at our top selections for the Vigil. Patches is the horse to beat. I think from a class standpoint, War Bomber is comparable. Can he get this distance? Is this his surface? That's the question. I need someone to put the heat on Patches O'Houlihan, but I do think War Bomber classes up with these horses at the very least. You're going with the big name.
The big name and the very short price, Dan. I mean, there's no way getting around it, right? Patches O'Houlihan, there's a reason he's even money on the morning line. He's going to be an extremely short price. And I think I said War Bomber is peculiar. He is. He's kind of an oddball in this race, right? But I think with that, you'll get value. And you talked about maybe needing the pace set up. We know Patches is going. We know the horse on the inside can go, as well as Rock Crest. So it's not, that far-fetched to think there might be a big pace meltdown in a horse like War Bomber. I agree with you. Look at the races he's been in. In terms of the level of competition he has consistently faced throughout his career, he is the class of the field.
Same superfecta, different order. 7315 for Ashley, 5731 for me. It's the Vigil, and it's a Super Saturday at Woodbine. Good luck.